During this time that I was with these beings, I was given information by them. What was important was this amazing spiritual knowledge that they imparted. They said that humanity was going to go through a period of time where it was like saying it was a time of choice, and that we would have a choice as to which way humanity was going to continue, and how this particular time we had the ability to change anything that may be in our path. Cataclysms were shown to me when I was on board this craft, and that there was the possibilities that these things may be coming in our future. They said we, as a people, have the ability to change the course of how much destruction there may be from all of those natural events. And we also had the ability to change the thinking of man, and through that we would be able to change the way that we live. The Great Gathering is something that I was given knowledge from these tall blondes about how we would create this unity of man. Brings everyone from the indigenous cultures as the most important in this process, and all of these other areas together as one, so that we can move forward and create the change that we need in the world. My name is Miriam Delicado, and I am the author of the book Blue Star Fulfilling Prophecy. I have had lifelong contacts with a group of beings that I call the Tall Blondes. And these beings go by many different names all over the earth, from different groups of people, different tribes of people, different indigenous people, I'm sure, have different names for these beings. These contacts have really been throughout my entire life, and came to an absolute moment of realization for me in 1988 when I was 22 years old. And it was a very profound time in my life, because I was traveling in a car with 3 adults and a child, and I was taken from a highway in the physical world. I was physically taken and walked down this highway off into the forest and on board a very large disc-shaped craft, where I was fortunate enough to have had the opportunity to spend 3 hours with these tall, blonde, blue-eyed beings. And this particular encounter sparked a lot of things for me that took me all the way back to remembering encounters when I was younger that were then, much later in my life, verified through family members, through strangers even, for some of the events that I remembered. So it's quite a complex and fascinating set of circumstances that I've been through in my life. During this time that I was with these beings, I was given information by them and told all sorts of things on so many different levels of life and the existence of life itself. They explained to me how life was formed, the physics of it, matter, antimatter, gravitational pull, and how that was created, why it was created. They talked about how their crafts were run, all sorts of technical information. But putting all of that aside, that wasn't really what was important. What was important was this amazing spiritual knowledge that they imparted, not to me, but within me. And this enabled me to understand in a way that is almost inexpressible how humanity and Earth and the universe and even them are all interrelated, and how our actions here and the choices and decisions that we make are affecting our Earth and affecting each other, and then rippling out to affect the rest of the universe. And this includes the other dimensions of life, where we go when we die. It affects everything. And they asked me when I was 22 years old in 1988, and we're now in 2009, they asked me to come forward at some point and share this information and share my experiences with the world. And the purpose for this was to, at least on some level, in whatever way possible, assist people in understanding that we must be responsible, and that our actions are not just the actions of an individual, but the actions of the whole. And so the whole process of life itself, the evolution of man, the evolution of a human being, the evolution of one life, actually affects everything. And how, as the individual, our choices and our responsibilities are to everything. But really, what they said to me is what drives me to come forward and talk about this with people, in the face of ridicule. They said that humanity was going to go through a period of time where it was like saying it was a time of choice, and that we would have a choice as to which way humanity was going to continue for our children and for our grandchildren and for the future. Not only for humanity, but also for the planet itself, which also means the universe. And how this time of choice was going to determine whether or not we lived a life of spirit and of love and of balance with all of these different energies and existence, such as the earth, such as the heart, God, in whatever form you choose to believe. And how this particular time, we have the ability to change anything that may be in our path. For example, great cataclysms were shown to me when I was on board this craft, and that there was the possibilities that these things may be coming in our future. They talked to me about how solar flares might be coming to the earth, and earthquakes and volcanoes and all of these really dark things. But in reality, what they said to me was so moving. They said, we, as a people, have the ability to change the course of how much destruction there may be from all of those natural events. And we also had the ability to change the thinking of man. And through that, we would be able to change the way that we live, so that we are living more in balance with the earth, and that we are living in a more joyous state of being. That's what drives me to do this, is that we are people like myself. We are from all walks of life. We are from all age groups. We are from all educational levels. We are everywhere in society. Every aspect and area of society, there is one of me. And you may not even know it, but we know. We know that we are from the stars, that we are, at least in part, not a human being, that we have a responsibility, and that we are taking actions in our personal lives and taking responsibility. And as a collective, we are taking responsibility to ensure that we have done our part to share that we know that there's other life. We know that there's other existence. We know that we're on a path that is not in the best interest of humanity and not in the best interest of the universe. So we need to take responsibility in our daily lives and with our daily choices to create a change. And this particular moment, we have been waiting a very long time to see. Because right now is the moment that if you've ever thought about taking positive action to create a positive change in a peaceful way, that moment is now. Because we are running out of time. And the ability for us to turn is going to be lost unless every single one of the people that hear these messages do not find their voice, do not speak from the heart, do not create the community centers, do not create the new technologies, the new way of building, the new way of teaching our children, the new way of growing our food, a new way of living life. One man, one woman, one child, one being, in some ways has the ability to create a spark that lights the world. But we cannot, as an individual, change that world. We must do it in unity. And so many people like myself who are contactees feel this necessity to sacrifice any type of luxuries in life, even friendships, relationships, homes, to further this voice and make it stronger. So even though we do not verbally speak, because it is not necessary for us to speak to one another or pick up a phone or write a letter, we get messages from here and from there. We get messages from them and from God telling us that we need to create this one voice and that we need to be responsible and we need to make our voices heard. And that's what I'm doing here. These tall, blonde, blue-eyed beings in 1988 instructed me that there would come a time when they wanted me to come forward to the public. And they wanted me to share this story of my experiences to bring enlightenment to people, to bring knowledge to people that they exist. So they didn't really say, we want you to write a book, but they told me to write a book, really, and to be public as possible with this story. The reason for the name of the book, Blue Star, Fulfilling Prophecy, is more of a question for us than an answer. Because many prophecies have been given throughout the history of man. And I named it this because when I was on board the craft, they told me a prophecy. I don't really care for that word, but they told me a prophecy. They said, one day a star will appear in the sky for all of man to see. Nothing or no one will be able to hide its presence from the world, and it will be a sign to the people that the end is near and it is time to prepare. This doesn't mean anything dark. It doesn't mean anything bad. It just means that we're in a transitional time. In whatever form that will be, it will be. And so through the process of my own acceptance of this, because I didn't just have this experience and come forward. I didn't even have the experience and all this knowledge and be able to come forward. This has been a struggle. But there are prophecies in many different religions around the world and many different beliefs around the world that a star is going to appear. And after my experience, and as well as many years later, I found that there is one prophecy in particular that was almost identical from what I learned from the internet to what I was told, and that was the Hopi Blue Star prophecy. In no way do I believe that's the only one, because of course the Bible talks about it, and almost every religion, if you look into it, or every belief talks about this star coming. I was not told that it would be blue, but I chose this because many of the things that I've experienced are similar to indigenous cultures, to indigenous beliefs around the world. And we as individuals, contactees, have remarkable knowledge that is identical to different nations, indigenous nations around the earth. One would argue that these things are the imaginations of us. But I put it right back to them and I say, please go back and do your research and educate yourself into who it is that's saying these things. Why are they saying them? There are those who come forward who are only looking for attention. There are those who come forward with great struggle. There are those who have come forward 50 years ago with similar information or the same information. Why? Why is it that so many of us are coming forward? Why is it that so many of us are feeling these, having these understandings that we are not from here and looking more towards these star beings at this point? And why are so many of us getting the same message about the blue star? The blue star is not just in indigenous cultures. It's actually a phenomenon that people have had blue star visions that have completely changed their entire lives, where they see a star and it moves through them, and they are changed after that. They are completely devoted to Earth. They are completely devoted to humanity in service, with no ego, or very little ego. And so the blue star, in my view, my personal view, because of information that I received from them, was in fact Comet Homes. And I've stated this from the time I came forward. From the moment I became public, I was instructed to write my book and have it finished, well, as I was writing. They asked me to have it finished by a certain date, and it was imperative that I have it done before November of 2007. And they were very, very, very clear in this message, in my dreams, in my meditations, to have this done. And then when November arrived, so did Comet Homes. And then Comet Homes exploded and became the largest known object in the known universe. And what color do you think that it radiated? Blue. And this comet could be seen from every corner of the Earth with the naked eye. So the question really is this the prophecy that we've all been waiting for? And I believe that we don't need to pay a lot of attention to that anymore, because we can clearly see that we're ready for a change. And we can clearly know that it's time to begin that process. And the only way that we will get there, there is only one way. Only one. Through unity of the heart. Speaking clearly and softly. And this will be a whole new world for all of us. Over the years, even for me, I've watched a real change in society, and I've watched a real change in the perceptions of reality and the perceptions of truth in society. What's great is that there's becoming a deeper and larger understanding of Indigenous culture and how important it is. And there's a lot of problems in the Indigenous cultures. I mean, difficult problems. But these are not the problems of one people. They are actually the problems of humanity. Because according to these tall, blonde, blue-eyed beings that I have contact with, the Indigenous cultures came from another world, the last world, and that they were meant to be the teachers and the leaders of this current world that we are living upon. And they are the stewards of this land. They are the original people of this earth. And so for this reason, they have valuable insights that we can benefit from. But we also have to be very careful as to how we approach them, how we learn to live as one, because they have their ceremonies and their beliefs, and we have our world on the outside here. And truly, they will never be one. They will never be fully integrated, because they each have a place. It's like the yin and the yang. They both have their place. But we need to learn how to live together and be able to give those insights into one another as to how we can best cohabitate on this earth with the animals, with the air, and with each other. We need to start supporting the Indigenous cultures, the Indigenous people around this world. Because if we are respectful of their ceremonies and their knowledge, and know that this is not something that they have to give to us. No one has a right to demand anything from me, so why would I demand of them? But what I do ask at this time is an understanding that many of us are here. Many of these contactees, these light workers, as we call them in our world, have a great understanding and respect of who they are, and we recognize them, and we are actually here in service to them. And we are waiting for the opportunity to be told exactly what they ask of us in our voice and in our actions. Because to be broad and say, take care of the earth, is no longer functioning and no longer productive for us. We must be clear. We must speak from our hearts, and we must speak without judgment of one another. And most important, we must speak without ego. They have great knowledge, and we have great knowledge. Each world deserves to be heard, deserves to have respect. And those like myself are waiting for the opportunity when all of us will come together, not as a different tribe, not as a different race, not from a different country, but as one people. And I believe with all my heart that the Indigenous cultures from around the world are also waiting for this time. So my message to them would also be that we are ready, we are in service, and we are here, not to demand of culture, not to demand of ceremonies, not to demand of sacred knowledge, but to say we are here to accept your voice into our hearts and your wisdom into our being, so that we may live together in harmony upon this earth with all that is. Something that was very important when I was on board the craft in 1988, something that was very important when I was taken on board and instilled within me is something that I call the Great Gathering. And the Great Gathering is about humanity coming together as one people. And one of the keys to be able to create this gathering is people from all walks of life. There's so much talk about the rich and the poor and the differences between the two of them. But I know that the heart of a human being is simply that. It is the heart of a human being. And that when we form this gathering, it will be from the hearts of humans. And I choose to say no one is to be left out of this circle. And I instill this in everyone that I speak to, because the Great Gathering that was explained to me by the tall blondes included everyone. The young, the old, the rich, the poor, the religious, the technical, the scientists. It is from every walk of life. But the creation of this will begin, and has already begun, by people who have already been touched by that spark of knowledge. And that spark of knowledge is coming from God, in whatever concept you have of him, it, her, the. It is coming from your own inner spirit. It is coming from these ETs. It is coming from everywhere. And so the Great Gathering is something that I was given knowledge from these tall blondes about how we would create this unity of man, to create that voice and be able to simply state what it is that we needed in order to make a better world. But we must be clear with what we ask. So this Great Gathering brings everyone from the indigenous cultures as the most important in this process, and all of these other areas together as one, so that we can move forward and create the change that we need in the world. This is about one voice for one people on one earth. Human beings have the potential for greatness, and regardless of what deity you may choose to work with, regardless of what God you may choose to name, regardless of what man you may choose to admire, we have the potential to be all of those things. But we cannot attain them unless we do it in unity. The most powerful gift that we have is the gift of our energy, of our lives, of life itself. And one of the things that is so important for us to remember is who we are. If we remember who we are, we then remember where we came from. We remember how powerful we are, and how our thoughts have the ability to create reality here in this world. If a meteor were coming towards Earth, and enough human beings used their mind to push it away, it would happen. And there's been scientific proof that these things, that the power of the mind, of thought itself, is a reality. That it does have an effect. That it is something that we can use. So imagine the power of your thoughts as an individual, if you could just focus them with the rest of humanity, what we are capable of. We are capable of greatness. The connection to God, the connection to our spirits, the connection to one another. The limits that we put on ourselves are slowly breaking down, because so many people are waking up to the reality that we are great exactly as we are, and that we are exactly where we are meant to be. And if we just let go and accept one another, we have the potential to change the world with our thoughts.